I never imagined I'd become one of those suspicious mother-in-laws you see in movies. You know, the type always finding fault, always skeptical, never quite approving of the woman their son chose. That wasn't me. I'd always prided myself on being open-minded, welcoming. When my husband Tom passed away 3 years ago, I promised myself I'd be the kind of mother who embraced whoever my son Ryan brought into our family. We'd already lost so much. I wasn't about to lose more by being petty or jealous. And when Ryan introduced me to Ashley at that Sunday dinner 18 months ago, I was genuinely thrilled. After years of watching my son throw himself into his work as a civil engineer, seeing him light up when he talked about someone, it filled a hollow place in my chest that had been there since Tom died. Ashley seemed wonderful. Sweet, attentive, always asking about my day, bringing me flowers from the farmer's market where they'd apparently met by chance. She had this warm smile and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. They'd been dating for 6 months when Ryan told me they were getting married. I'll admit, I was a little surprised by how quickly things moved, but Ryan was 35, not some impulsive teenager. He knew what he wanted, and Ashley made him happy in a way I hadn't seen since before his father died. That was enough for me. The wedding was small, intimate, just family and close friends at the courthouse, followed by a dinner at Tom's favorite restaurant. Ashley wore a simple cream dress, and when Ryan looked at her, I saw the same expression Tom used to give me. My heart swelled. Maybe we were going to be okay after all. Maybe this was the new chapter our family needed. Ashley moved into Ryan's house, a charming craftsman, just 15 minutes from my place in suburban Portland. She immediately set about making it a home, and she'd often call me for advice about curtains or where to find the best vintage furniture. We grew close quickly. Or at least, I thought we did. The first time something felt off was about 2 months after the wedding. I'd stopped by their house unannounced. I know, not the best mother-in-law move, but I'd been nearby and had some tomatoes from my garden. Ashley welcomed me in with her usual warmth, and we sat in the kitchen having tea while she told me about her new job at a non-profit downtown. That's when I noticed it. On the counter, cooling on a wire rack, was a coffee cake. Not just any coffee cake, but Tom's coffee cake. The recipe had been his grandmother's. He'd made it every Sunday morning for 30 years. It was specific, with cardamom and a brown sugar streusel topping that you had to get just right or it would burn. The smell filling that kitchen was unmistakable. "Is that?" I started, my throat suddenly tight. Ashley smiled, that same warm smile. "Oh yes, I found this amazing recipe online. Do you like cardamom?" I wasn't sure, but Ryan mentioned once that it reminded him of Sunday mornings, so I thought I'd try it. I stared at the cake. The golden top, the perfect crumb structure, showing where she'd already cut a slice. It looked exactly like Tom's. Exactly. "It's lovely," I managed. "Very authentic looking. I'm so glad you like it. I've been trying to learn all of Ryan's favorite things. I want to make him feel really at home, you know?" It was a sweet sentiment, perfectly reasonable, but something about it nagged at me as I drove home that afternoon. Tom's coffee cake recipe wasn't online. I'd looked once, years ago, thinking about starting a food blog with it. It was nowhere on the internet. It had been in Tom's grandmother's handwritten cookbook, which I still had in my kitchen drawer. I'd never shared it with anyone. Ryan certainly didn't know how to make it. He could barely toast bread. So how did Ashley? I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just a similar recipe. Maybe the cardamom was a coincidence. I pushed the thought away and focused on being grateful that my son had found someone who cared enough to learn about his childhood memories. But then it happened again. 3 weeks later, I was at their house for dinner. Ashley had made pot roast, Tom's pot roast, with the specific combination of vegetables he insisted on: carrots, red potatoes, pearl onions, and parsnips. Not parsley, like most recipes called for, but parsnips. It was an odd choice that Tom had sworn by, something about the sweetness balancing the savory. I'd never met anyone else who made it that way. "This is delicious," I said carefully, watching Ashley's face. "How did you decide on this particular combination of vegetables?" She laughed. "Oh, I experimented a bit. Ryan mentioned he loved pot roast as a kid, so I tried a few versions. This one seemed to really resonate with him. Said it tasted like home." I looked at Ryan, who was happily eating, oblivious to my growing unease. He caught my eye and grinned. It's amazing, right, Mom? Ashley's become such a good cook. Reminds me of the meals we used to have when Dad was alive. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling. It was too specific, too exact. I pulled out my phone and did what I probably shouldn't have. I started searching for Ashley online. Her social media was sparse. A few photos from college, some pictures from their wedding, posts about her nonprofit work. Nothing concerning. Nothing that explained how she knew these intimate details about my family's life. I was about to close my phone, feeling foolish, when I noticed something strange. Her LinkedIn showed she'd worked at 5 different jobs in the past 3 years, none lasting more than 6 months. For someone in her 30s, that was a lot of turnover. Before that, there was a 2-year gap with no employment listed at all. I tried to remember, had she ever talked about what she did during that time? Ryan had mentioned she'd been traveling, finding herself after a difficult breakup, but 2 years? And then this unstable employment pattern? I put my phone away. I was being ridiculous. Plenty of people have rocky employment histories, especially in their 20s. And maybe she was just good at research, at learning about Ryan's family to make him happy. It was thoughtful, really. I should be grateful. But I couldn't sleep. The incidents kept accumulating. Small things that individually seemed innocent, but together formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Ashley started rearranging furniture in their house. Not in her own style, but in a way that was eerily familiar. Their living room began to look more and more like the house Tom and I had shared. The couch angled toward the window the same way. The reading lamp positioned on the left side of the armchair. Tom was left-handed and always complained when lamps were on the right. She started using phrases Tom used to say. Little things like, "Well, that's the long and short of it," when summing something up, or "onwards and upwards" when encouraging Ryan. These weren't common expressions. They were Tomisms, quirky phrases that had been unique to him. One evening, I arrived early for dinner and heard Ashley singing in the kitchen. I froze in the doorway. It was the lullaby I used to sing to Ryan when he was a baby. Not Twinkle Twinkle or Rockabye Baby. This was an old folk song my grandmother had taught me, something I'd never heard anyone else sing. The lyrics were in Swedish, a language I barely spoke and certainly had never discussed with Ashley. "Where did you learn that song?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual as I entered the kitchen. Ashley turned, spatula in hand, not missing a beat. "Oh, you're here. I hope I didn't startle you. I was just humming something. Is it familiar?" "Maybe I heard it somewhere. It sounded like you were singing actual words." She laughed, looking slightly embarrassed. "Oh, you know how it is. Sometimes you pick up bits of things and your brain fills in the blanks." Was I singing words? I wasn't even paying attention. But she had been. I'd heard her. Clear Swedish lyrics that I'd only ever sung in the privacy of Ryan's nursery, late at night, when it was just the two of us. That's when I decided to really dig. I spent the next week doing something I'm not proud of. I hired a private investigator, a discreet one, recommended by a friend whose daughter had gone through a messy divorce. I told myself I just needed to know more about Ashley's background to ease my mind. If everything checked out, I'd drop it and work on accepting her fully into our family. If something was wrong, well, I needed to know before things went too far. The investigator's name was Linda Chen. She was professional, non-judgmental, and fast. Within 5 days, she called me to schedule a meeting. I met her at a coffee shop across town, somewhere I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. She slid a folder across the table, her expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Patterson," she said quietly, "I found some things you need to see." The folder was full of printouts, screenshots, photos. My hands started shaking as I looked through them. Ashley had a storage unit. Linda had managed to talk her way in with a story about the previous renter leaving something behind. What she found inside made my blood run cold. There were photos, dozens of them. Photos of Tom, not just ones that had been public or on social media, but ones taken from a distance. Tom at the grocery store, Tom at his favorite coffee shop, Tom playing guitar at local venues. These dated back 4 years, when Tom was still alive. There were newspaper clippings about Tom's death, his obituary, printed and reprinted, articles about the heart attack that had taken him so suddenly. There were photos of our house, of Ryan, of me. Not recent photos, these were from years ago, before Ashley was supposedly in our lives. And then there was what Linda called the shrine. A wall in the storage unit covered with photos of Tom, concert tickets from his performances, set lists, napkins with his handwriting. In the center was a wedding photo, not of Ashley and Ryan, but a photo of Tom and me from our wedding day, 38 years ago. Ashley had somehow obtained it, had it enlarged, and mounted it on the wall. "There's more," Linda said gently. "The employment gap on her LinkedIn?" I tracked down her previous residence. Her landlord remembers her because she was evicted. The apartment was filled with similar materials, photos, recordings, memorabilia, all related to a local musician. Your husband. I felt like I couldn't breathe. But Tom died 3 years ago. She married Ryan a year ago. She couldn't have been. She wasn't. Mrs. Patterson. I spoke with a former coworker of hers from before the employment gap. Ashley talked about Tom constantly, went to all his shows. The coworker described it as an obsession. After Tom passed, Ashley apparently had some kind of breakdown. She was hospitalized briefly. When she got out, she started following your son. The room spun. Following Ryan? Linda showed me more photos. Ashley outside Ryan's office building. Ashley at the farmer's market Ryan frequented not once, but every Saturday for months before they met. Ashley at the gym where Ryan worked out. The meet-cute at the farmer's market? Linda said. It wasn't chance. She engineered it. I talked to the vendor who was there that day. Ashley had been asking about Ryan for weeks, learning his schedule, his favorite products. She planned the entire thing. I don't remember leaving the coffee shop. I sat in my car for an hour, staring at the folder, trying to process what I'd learned. This woman, who'd seemed so perfect, so caring, she'd been stalking my family. She'd been obsessed with Tom, and when he died, she'd transferred that obsession to Ryan. She'd manufactured an entire relationship based on research and surveillance. And now she was living with my son, sleeping next to him every night. She had access to everything, his finances, his home, his life. I knew I had to tell Ryan. But how do you tell your son that his wife is not who she claims to be? That the love story he believes in is actually something much darker? I drove to their house. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Ryan would be at work, but Ashley's nonprofit let her work from home on Wednesdays. I needed to confront her first, to understand what we were dealing with before involving Ryan. She answered the door with her usual warm smile, but something in my face must have given me away because it faltered. "Margaret, is everything okay? You look pale. Come in, let me get you some water." I followed her inside, the folder clutched in my hands. We sat in the living room, arranged so exactly like Tom and I had arranged ours all those years ago. "Ashley," I said, my voice shaking, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She looked concerned, confused. "Of course. What's wrong?" I opened the folder. I showed her the photos, the shrine, the evidence of stalking. Her face went through several emotions: shock, denial, fear, and then, strangest of all, a kind of calm acceptance. "You found it," she said softly. "I wondered if you would. You're smarter than most people." "Most people? Have you done this before?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the garden she'd planted Tom's favorite flowers. I realized now, dahlias and black-eyed Susans. "I loved him," she said finally. "Tom, I know that must sound crazy to you, but I did. I loved him from the first time I saw him perform at that little venue downtown. He was so talented, so full of life. He saw me once, smiled at me from the stage, and I knew he was special." "Ashley, you never met him." "Not really, but I felt like I knew him. I went to all his shows. I learned everything about him. And then he died, and it was like a piece of me died too." She turned to face me, and I saw tears in her eyes. But then I realized he wouldn't want me to be sad. He'd want someone to take care of his family, his wife who was all alone, his son who missed him so much. I could do that. I could be there for them, the way Tom would have wanted. My stomach turned. "So you started following Ryan." "Not following, watching over, protecting. And then I realized Ryan needed someone. He was lonely, he needed love, and I could give him that. I could give him everything his father would have wanted him to have. I studied your family. I learned all the things that would make Ryan feel at home, feel loved. The coffee cake, the pot roast, the songs. I became what you needed, what he needed. Ashley, that's not love. You need help. Professional help. She smiled then, a sad, distant smile. Everyone says that. But I'm not sick. I'm devoted. There's a difference. You manufactured an entire relationship based on lies. Based on love, she corrected. For Tom, and then for his family. I made Ryan happy, didn't I? You said so yourself at the wedding. You said I made him happier than you'd seen him in years. She was right, and that made it so much worse. Ryan did love her, or at least he loved the character she'd created, the perfect wife who understood him completely because she'd been spying on his entire life. Ryan deserves the truth, I said, standing up. And you need to leave. Today. Her face hardened. If you tell him, it will destroy him. He loves me. We're building a life together. Are you really going to take that away from him? Haven't you already lost enough? Don't you dare, I said, my voice low and fierce. Don't you dare use Tom against me. You didn't know him. You don't know what he would have wanted. But I can tell you one thing. He would never, ever want his son to be manipulated like this. I called Ryan from their house, told him he needed to come home immediately. When he arrived 20 minutes later, concerned and confused, I showed him everything. Ashley sat silently while I explained what I'd found, while I laid out the evidence. I watched my son's face as he processed it. The disbelief, the denial, the desperate hope that there was some explanation, and then, finally, the horrible understanding. Is this true? He asked Ashley, his voice barely above a whisper. She looked at him with those same warm eyes that had charmed us all. I love you. That part was always true. But everything else was a lie. Not a lie. I knew what you needed. I could be that for you. I am that for you. These past months have been real, Ryan. Our marriage is real. Based on stalking. Based on you studying my life like I was some kind of project. His hands were shaking. The farmer's market. You planned that. You planned all of it. Because I knew we could be happy. And we are happy. Don't let this ruin what we have. But it was already ruined. How could it not be? The foundation of their entire relationship was built on deception. The next few weeks were brutal. Ryan moved out of the house and back in with me temporarily. We consulted with a lawyer about annulment. Ashley contested it at first, insisting the marriage was valid, but when faced with the evidence, especially the storage unit contents, she eventually agreed. We also strongly urged her to get help. It turned out she had a diagnosis, de Clerambault's syndrome, a form of erotomania where the patient believes someone, often someone famous or unattainable, loves them or is connected to them. In Ashley's case, it had manifested as an obsession with Tom, and when he died, that obsession transferred to his family. A psychiatrist we consulted explained that in her mind, she was fulfilling what she believed was Tom's wishes by caring for us. It didn't excuse what she'd done, it didn't make the violation any less painful, but it helped us understand it was a mental illness, not just malicious intent. Ashley moved out of state after the annulment. Last I heard, she was in a residential treatment program, working with therapists who specialized in obsessive disorders. I hope she gets better. I really do. But I also hope she never contacts us again. Ryan struggled. Of course he did. He'd fallen in love with someone who turned out to be a carefully constructed illusion. He went to therapy, processing the betrayal, the loss, the strange grief of mourning a relationship that had never really existed in the way he thought it did. But he's healing. Slowly. He's dating again. Cautiously. And this time, he's taking things slower. He's learned to watch for red flags, to ask questions, to not ignore his instincts. As for me, I learned something too. I learned that my gut feeling, that nagging sense that something was off, was trying to tell me something important. I'd pushed it down, told myself I was being paranoid, being a stereotypical suspicious mother-in-law. But I wasn't wrong. Sometimes, love makes us want to ignore the warning signs. We so badly want things to be okay, want our family to be happy, that we convince ourselves everything is fine when it's not. But there's a difference between being accepting and being willfully blind. If something feels wrong, it probably is. That doesn't mean you should be paranoid about everything, jumping at shadows, but it means you should pay attention to patterns, ask questions, trust but verify, as they say. Ryan tells people now that his marriage was annulled due to irreconcilable differences. It's easier than explaining the truth. But between us, we talk about it honestly, about how he missed signs because he wanted to believe so badly that he'd found his person, about how I almost didn't investigate because I didn't want to be that kind of mother-in-law. We both wish we'd trusted our instincts sooner. It's been 6 months since Ashley left. Ryan is doing well. He's found a great therapist, reconnected with old friends, and is slowly rebuilding his confidence. Last week, he even laughed about something. A real, genuine laugh, not the hollow ones he'd been giving for months. "Mom," he said to me over dinner at my house, "thank you for pushing, for not letting me stay in denial. I know it was hard. I know I didn't want to hear it at first. I just wanted to protect you," I said. "That's all I ever wanted." "I know. And you did. You saved me from, I don't even know what. Years more of that? Who knows what would have happened?" I thought about that. What would have happened if I'd ignored my instincts? If I'd let things continue? How long would Ashley have been able to maintain the facade? What would she have done when it inevitably crumbled? I'm just grateful we found out when we did, before there were children involved, before Ryan was even more deeply entangled. Now, when I meet someone new in our family's life, I'm cautious. Not cynical, not closed off, but aware. I pay attention. I ask questions. I listen to that little voice in my head that says something's not quite right. Because sometimes that voice is trying to protect you from something you can't quite see yet. Something that's hiding in plain sight, wearing a warm smile, and bringing you flowers from the farmer's market. And sometimes, being the suspicious mother-in-law isn't being mean. Sometimes it's being vigilant. Sometimes it's being the only one willing to ask the hard questions that need to be asked. I hope you never need this advice. I hope everyone who comes into your family's life is exactly who they claim to be. But if something feels off, if patterns emerge that don't quite make sense, if coincidences pile up too neatly, pay attention, ask questions. Investigate if you need to. Because protecting your family isn't about being paranoid, it's about being aware. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is question something that everyone else accepts without thinking. Ryan is going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And somewhere, I hope Ashley is getting the help she needs to be okay too. But I'll never stop trusting my instincts. Not after this.